Welcome back, Prosperity Collabs. I'm Chris Mueller, your host, and I am thrilled to bring you today's episode featuring a remarkable guest, Marian Benton. Now, Marian has been a pivotal figure in the real estate industry, serving as a role model, a mentor, quite frankly, as a fierce businesswoman. She's the regional operating principal for the Inland Empire region of Keller Williams in California, and she's also the founder of that region. And so she's overseeing 19 market centers, and she also owns and operates 3 market centers herself. And so in today's episode, Mary is going to be sharing her journey from starting in real estate as a mom transitioning back into the workforce in Ann Arbor, Michigan, all the way to bringing Keller Williams to the Inland Empire and actually founding that region. We're going to dive into her experiences, the challenges that she's faced, the lessons that she's learned along the way. Marian's story is absolutely one of resilience, leadership, and the power of being authentic and coachable. So whether you're in real estate or you're in any other industry, there is a lot to learn from her incredible journey. So sit back, relax, and be inspired. Welcome to the show, Marian Benton.
Well, hello.
Yes.
Nice to be here.
So, Marian, the audience is listening, and if you could just give me a real quick rundown on who you are and what you do now. Well, I want to get into the backstory of that, but who are you?
Well, let's see, who am I? I'm the regional operating principal for the Inland Empire region in California. So that means that I have right now 19 large real estate companies we call market centers that are spread throughout Southern California and the Inland Empire. And I have then, sort of out of left field, the market center that I own and operate in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where I started. It was my first ownership venture. And that's sort of my baby, and I've kept that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the audience can hear your very strong Michigan accent.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Yes. Everybody in Ann Arbor speaks just like me.
So, okay. So you are in leadership with Keller Williams.
Yeah.
You said you are the operating principal of the Inland Empire region.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? What is operating principal?
Yeah. Well, in Keller Williams, we have funny titles for everything, don't we? We call our managers team leaders. We call our owners operating principals, and we sort of follow the same logic in a region. A region has oversight of areas that are divided up across America. So I am the owner, or the principal owner of the Inland Empire, and then I have a regional director who would be the equivalent of the manager or the team leader. And then we have, just like in an office, we would have a market center administrator who takes care of all of the books and operations. And in a region, we have a regional operations manager. So my job, my day-to-day job in California is running the operation of the Inland Empire region.
Okay. Now, I know a little of the history. You say that you're the operating principal for the Inland Empire, but your story here in Southern California is a little bit different than that. You're not just the owner.
No.
You brought Keller Williams to this area.
That's correct. In 2003, I was running the market center in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which I had opened 3 years earlier. And it was exciting. One of the most exciting parts of being in my position is the opportunity to launch new market centers. It's one of those times in real estate when everybody is moving the same way. They're excited. It's a new venture. Those are the times that we look back on and just fun. It was just fun times. So in the Inland Empire, when I came here in 2003, nobody knew anything about Keller Williams. There were no Keller Williams in this area. There were a couple in the San Diego area, very small, and maybe one or two in the LA area. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, we were unknown. So much so that Gary Keller had just written the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and my plan when I came out here to bring Keller Williams to the Inland Empire was to bring with me 200 millionaire real estate agent books. And I found a wonderful title rep from First American Title. And I said to her, could you give me the names of the top 200 agents in this area? Which she did. And I sent them a book. And they'd heard of the book, some of them, but it was new. It was just, I think it had only been out a few months at that time. And to launch the book, Gary Keller was coming to LAX to do a presentation about it. So I sent the book out, and then I called them up and said to them, did you get my book? Yes, I did. I'd love to meet with you. I asked them if they read it. They all said they'd read it. I don't think they had, because they didn't know a lot about it. But I would set up appointments with them, and I told them that I was bringing Keller Williams to the area, and who would they like to see, if they could pick anybody who was going to run this new, exciting company, who would they like to have in that position? And would they give me their names? And many times they said, well, I think I'd like to do that.
Right.
And so we started to open up market centers, and I think it was 2005 that we opened 10 in that 1 year. So it's pretty exciting time.
Yeah. So I just want to underline it. If you're listening and you're not familiar with the real estate industry, Keller Williams is the largest brand in the world. Now, but it wasn't in 2004.
No, not at all.
And here in the Inland Empire, I think Keller Williams, I think it is the number one company in the Inland Empire, probably sales and volume. But every single one of those offices began with a conversation that you had with a real estate agent who was looking to expand their opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
I think real estate agents get to a point in their business, they build a team. Maybe they've become a broker, they build a team. And when you have a team that's functioning well, it's basically leverage for what you do. And some people, want to stop there. That's enough for them. And others get to the point where the next obvious step for them is to own their own company. And I was looking for people who, from what I could tell from the data that I had, would possibly be in that mindset that this was the next. And sometimes they weren't even aware of it until you plant that seed. Say, well, why not? If you can run a team and you've got 20 people here, why couldn't you run a whole market center? And what does that look like? And does it give you more leverage? It's certainly the first couple of years in opening a new market center, it is all hands on deck. When people tell me, well, I'd like to do it because I don't want to work so much. Well, that's not how it works.
Right.
The first couple of years, it's hard work, getting all the little pieces together to make it sink. But beyond that, it certainly is leverage. And if you love this industry, I love real estate. I've loved every aspect of it. When I sold real estate, I got into real estate because I thought, well, I could just work when I wanted to. But the truth was, when I got into real estate, I loved it so much. I worked all the time, so much so I had to really pull myself back from it, because those of us who are in real estate that do enjoy it know that it's a little bit addictive. You can find yourself looking at your phone at 10 o'clock at night and opening your eyes at 5:30 to check if somebody's got back to you. And I was one of those people. I was totally addicted to the business. So if you like it that much, those first couple of years in a new market center is just one fast roller coaster ride. And even from the perspective of being the regional director, as I was when I first came here, and working with the new market centers, it's you get to enjoy their ride with them, and it's a fun job.
Okay. Well, in some respects, we've started backwards, because the whole thrust of the podcast, the Prosperity Collabs, is really to look at success and say, okay, that person did that. How can I too? And I love the real estate industry because there really is the bar to entry is you take the state exam, right? But the bar to entry is there. The bar to success is much higher.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you started in real estate in Ann Arbor. Now, again, I know some of the background here. You had 2 small children. They had now gotten to school age.
That's right.
Background in international banking. If I mean this, I know the story. Sorry, I'm telling it for you. But then you find yourself in Michigan with 2 small children. You are not a native of Michigan.
No.
You grew up in.
Well, I grew up in the United Kingdom. I went to school in the UK. I left the UK when I was about 15. My parents relocated to Belgium. So I actually went to university in Belgium, and I graduated there, and I started my first job at Lloyds Bank International in Brussels.
Yeah. So you moved to Michigan, though, at this point, right? We did Lloyds Bank. We then take a detour, not a detour, but we choose to go out and raise the family.
Absolutely. I didn't work at all when I had every intention to go back to work. When my daughter arrived, I just stayed at home and looked after her, and I had the opportunity to do that because my husband had a full-time job. Yeah. So it was great.
But you find yourself now in Michigan. The kids are in school. You're looking to get back into something, I imagine. Yeah. And of course, you had this wealth of people you'd grown up with around you, and this strong sphere of influence, all of the advantages of knowing the culture, all that. So, you tell me about that.
Well, not so much. I'd been in Michigan, just had been relocated back to Michigan, and yes, my children were I think 5 and 7, and maybe a little older. And yeah, so I didn't know anybody. I decided real estate would be a good job for me because I could pick my time. So I'd been there to pick the kids up. I could take them to school. I didn't have a hard, fast schedule. So I thought, okay, this would be a good job for me. And I'd watched the relocation director who had moved us back to Michigan. And in my cocky self at that time, decided that I could probably do it better than her. So I went to the local real estate companies and interviewed for a job. And I wasn't actually particularly well received. The first one I went to, which was sort of had a reputation for being the classy company in town, they gave me a personality profile to take. I think it was like a DISC test. And when I called them back to see, how I did, they told me that my personality wasn't conducive to the sale of real estate. So I thought, oh, okay, well, whatever, find somebody else. So I went to another company, and much to my surprise, they told me the same thing. So then I saw, not to be deterred, I saw that Coldwell Banker was having a career night, and I signed up to go to their career night. The manager came out and gave a spiel, blah, 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 blah. And then the assistant manager came out. And this was an exciting, vibrant lady who I watched her talk, and I connected with her. I thought, yes, I could learn from this lady. So after the event, I waited and I went up to her and I said, I'm interested in becoming a real estate agent. And she said to me, do you have a real estate license? And I said, no, I do not. She said, well, that would be the first thing you need to go and do. And she handed me a piece of paper, and she was going to turn away and go on, just walk to the next person. And I said, can I ask you a question? She said, yes, absolutely. I said, do you do personality profiles? And she said, I can do if you want one. I went, no, I don't want one. So that was, that's an interesting side note, because I now teach career visioning, and I had absolutely zero faith in their, behavioral profiles at that time. But anyway, so I started to work at Coldwell Banker. I did not know anybody in the area. I had no sphere of influence. They were all overseas, or no family. I mean, nothing. So I based my career on for sale by owners. I liked for sale by owners because my logic was they didn't know anything. If I didn't like doing expireds because I figured they'd had a real estate agent, so they had some level of expectation. And being that I knew nothing, I was better off with the 4 sell-by owners. So I picked them as my target, and I started to, I didn't like door knocking, but I went to the door. I actually had a friend that we went together. She would do one door and I'd do the next one. And she would knock on the door and they would come and answer the door and welcome her in. And I would pretend to knock on the door and just leave my stuff and then call them later. But whatever, it worked. And I was, for that reason, my business was much more listing based than sales based, because it started out with learning how to list properties.
Yeah, I love that. So it became listing based. It wasn't intentional.
No,
it seems like the path of least resistance. They don't have a bad taste in their mouth yet. Right?
Right, yeah.
Trying to do it by themselves, so you have some level of expertise more than the average person. But you weren't necessarily door knocking. You were leaving the info, then following up.
Yeah.
Right? It's funny. I look at that disc test that you took. It said you didn't have what it takes to be a salesperson, and immediately you begin throwing yourself into the wood chipper. Whether that's going to different brokerages or now out to essentially cold call.
Yeah.
People have already said, I don't want a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Right. So how long did it take before you got traction? Before you really felt like, this isn't just something I'm doing. This is something I do.
I had my first listing within 90 days of signing up. And I had taken a buyer out to look at a house that I got from a floor-time call. That had gone very well because I got lost. I didn't know the area. I mean, I knew nothing. But that's why I really decided to stay focused on listings, because I didn't have to drive somebody in an area that I didn't know. And they hopefully didn't know more than I knew about what I was doing. So that was my logic, and it worked. So it was 3 months into it. The first year in real estate, I'd signed up for a program that was equivalent to what we have at Keller Williams now called Bold. It was like a 6-week sales program, and we were all divided into teams. And they had made me the team captain, which was a cruel joke, but everybody on the team had got a listing except for me. And I had been very resistant to the techniques that they were using, because the guy that was teaching the class used bad English, bad grammar. And I thought it was just terrible. He said he wanted everybody to say, in the teaching us how to list, we were to say, what will it take for you to list with me tonight? And I thought, that's just not good grammar. And I couldn't say it. But anyway, I found a way to say the same thing, a little bit more tasteful to me. And finally, I wasn't closing on people. So even though I was having all these appointments and getting to know a lot of for sale by owners, I wasn't closing. And so I got over that hump. And once I did, I just, I was very successful. My first listing came within 90 days. And at the end of the first year, with an average sale price back then, by the way, of like $120,000, I sold $1 million, and that was a real mark. And I was the rookie of the year the first year, and I've not told this story before. It's just seems like, I don't know, a long time ago and bragging, but 3 years into it, I was the number one producer in the office. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Wow. Did you ever go back to the other brokerages and say, I'd like to discuss something with you?
Well, actually, what happened, which was even more than me going back, is they started to call me to recruit me. And it gave me such delight and pleasure to be able to say, well, I'm sorry, but my personality is just not conducive to the sale of real estate. But you see, the thing is, I have a theory about that now, having spent a lot of time myself on personality profiles. The reality is that my personality wasn't conducive to the environment that they were in. They were absolutely spot on. Keller Williams is a very agent-centric company. It allows us to have a voice. When they look back, I became the top producer at Coldwell Banker. I eventually became the assistant manager and then the manager. And then I left and opened our own company. And that company basically closed down. So those first two companies that didn't want me probably did well not to have me, because had I been there, I may have done the same thing and they may have closed down.
Right.
So it's, I think that they didn't, on a DISC test, they look at how much D you have, which is your ability to be, outspoken, directive, responsive. And I had a lot of that, and that's not what they were looking for.
Right. So you were an empire builder,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't need empire builders.
No.
They needed cogs in the machine.
They wanted, they were much more like, they were very dependent companies. The people who worked there were dependent on them for the business they did. And I didn't work like that. I got my own business.
Yeah. So you went from top agent in the region or in the company, and then obviously regionally, to assistant manager.
Mm-hmm.
That I have to imagine that was a hard sell. I mean, because I'm thinking, here you are, you've got this great business on your own, and now I want to, hey, by the way, Marian, would you like to have a job?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't want the job at all. I went kicking and screaming into management. My good friend, the lady that had hired me into real estate, who is still in that market center now and been my partner now for many years, she was promoted to manager, and she needed somebody to work with her. And she said, just come and help me. And so I would probably not have done it had it not have been for that same year. God works in mysterious ways. That same year, my husband lost his job. He was in South Africa doing some financial thing, and they took out the entire financial division, and he basically was out of work. And so I got him to help me do certain things for me. Well, as he got involved in my business, we learned that while we had a beautiful marriage, we did not work well together. And this was my business, and it was my thing, and he came in and started trying to reorganize it. So the fact that this door was opening for me to go into being the assistant manager gave me a different focus. And so I basically passed my business over to him, which he blew up, and it all went away within a couple of years. And I started to be, in management. The business went from being, I forget now, I think somewhere like 15, 16 million to like 3 million the year that he took it over. But I hasten to add that he then built it back up with a completely different type of clientele base, working very, very differently from me. And he ended up doing a lot more business than I ever did. But so I went on this pathway of being the assistant manager. And when LaTanya took over the office, it had debt of $100,000, which again, back then was massive. Mm-hmm. By the end of the year, she had got it to be debt-free.
Wow.
So she'd done a wonderful job. Nobody liked her, but she'd done a really good job. And she was exhausted and tired and had enough. Mm-hmm. And she was offered a job to sell real estate advertising in a magazine and travel all over the country promoting this magazine. And she took the job and told them to make me the manager. So I really didn't want to do that because it meant I couldn't sell. As the assistant manager, I was able to sell somewhat. But anyway, I took it over. I eventually agreed. They got me by saying, just hire your replacement and then you can leave. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. Of course, I knew nothing about hiring a manager. I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought, whatever, that sounded good. And so that's what I started out doing. But one after another, I got people just, kept reneging on me. They would come to the interviews, they were interested, and I would just tell them what it was like, and they were like, out of here. So yeah.
Let's deal with that because, as a real estate agent, you're managing you, right? And your clients. So I think it has to be said. Yep. Realtors have lots of bosses, right? Yep. Every single client is a boss, but you're also running your business independently, and obviously when your husband comes in, we've got to negotiate that interpersonal. But now you're in an assistant manager and a manager position, and now you are dealing with an office full of, now how many agents did you have?
Well, when I took over, there were only about 36.
Okay, so 36 people who are independent contractors, which is a nice way of saying don't have to listen to you. And there's a whole new set of skills that has to be acquired.
Yeah.
Where did you go? How did you navigate that? Because you obviously did well.
Yeah. Well, I did, but not at first. I mean, as a real estate agent, you can do really well just by making sure that everybody likes you. I mean, you want your clients to like you. So you bend over backwards for them. You do whatever it takes to bring the deal together and keep everybody happy. And the way I worked is I aligned myself with them. So if things, I don't mean in a false way. I mean, genuinely, I was friends with my clients. And so when things didn't go well, I was upset. When things went very well, I was excited with them. So we sort of had this, I lived through the experience with them. Well, when you get into management, you can't do that because there's too much that comes at you. Everybody loved me at first because I was very good at what I did as a real estate agent. And they would come into my office and they would tell me they had a problem. My client, blah, 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 the other agent, blah, 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 whatever the thing was. And I would listen to the story and I'd think to myself, think, not say, wow, you shouldn't have done that. That was not the best thing. And I would sit there looking at them thinking, how can I get them back to where they need to be to fix this problem? And it was too complicated. So I would say, you know what, why don't you leave that with me and I'll deal with it for you. And so I would basically take their problems and I'd have a pile on my desk of folders because in those days everything was, contracts written out in hand and there would be a file and they would just pile up. And it would be 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night and I'd be speaking to unhappy people. Everybody was unhappy. My life up to that time had been a joyous experience because my clients were, if nothing else, I mean, things don't always go great, but if you've aligned yourself with them, you work through the problem with them, they were always happy. And all of a sudden, I was in a world where everybody I spoke to was, upset. And, when you are a manager and you fix a problem or things go really well, people don't call you to tell you that it's been a great experience or I just closed with your agent and they were wonderful. Those calls don't come very often. You get all the complaints. And I was at the end of my rope. Now, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker had sent me on a training program called Blueprint that was 3 days. That was their management training program. I went to Chicago. I met some really nice people, and I learned some things. But there was nothing to compare with. And I was in a real funk. I mean, and my husband kept giving me advice, and I was like, I'd already decided he didn't know anything about this world. And then one day, in that moment when I was just at the lowest ebb of just hating everything about what I did and trying to think how I could just get myself out of the situation, a man walked into my office by the name of Steve Murray. And Steve Murray had been hired by Paul Schweitzer, who was the owner of the Coldwell Banker office that I owned, to do an evaluation on the company. They'd been bought many times. We'd gone through so many different owners we were Sears Financial Network, we were May somebody, we were, and he started to ask me questions. He was just interviewing me as the manager of the office. And he asked me, how long have you been doing this job? Well, not very long, just do you like it? Oh, yes, of course, I love it, I said to him. And he said, well, what were you doing before? And I started to tell him about my real estate business, which lit me up because I loved talking about that. And then I went back to talking about the office and I was like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And so finally he said, well, you don't seem to be like you're very happy about it. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. And then I started to share my story with him. And he said to me, yeah, because you're not really very good at your job. And I thought, well, thank you. And I started to tell him how our numbers had improved. And he said, no. He said, I think you misunderstand what your job is. He said, your job is not to fix those problems. You made a decision that it was too difficult for you to teach them how to do it. Everybody knows you can do it. Of course you can. You wouldn't be here if you couldn't. But what you don't have the ability to do is to have them do it. Tell them how you would fix it so that they can go and fix it. And of course, it sounds so simple now. It's like Manager 101. But when you don't know and you're underwater, it doesn't come clearly to you until the right person shows up. And so he gave me that advice. And the next person that came in, I said to them, well, this is what I would do. And they said, oh, okay. And I said, but I don't have time to do that. You have to do it. So they didn't like me quite as much because they got very used to leaving their problems on my shoulders. But yeah, it worked. I finally learned that, it's like we say at Keller Williams, it's success through others. I had to learn that the very hard way.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple lessons here I think are important for leadership. And I think, you can't, if you're a leader, you cannot need the people you're leading to love you.
No.
Right?
You cannot.
Yeah. If you try to kind of make them love you or keep them in love with you, let's say, they won't. They'll just sort of take advantage of it, right?
Yeah, and they don't respect you either because, you don't respect somebody that you just pile problems on them, but don't even. And it was my fault 100% that the way that was unraveling. I had told them, give that to me. I didn't even give them an option. I looked at them and I thought to myself, there's no way you're going to be able to solve this. And I know I can do it. Well, if I'd got one or two, or even if I was leading a team, if I had a team, I could run a team like that and be sort of the manager who, troubleshooted any issues. But it's not scalable to an office. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's a classic leadership folly, though, right? New leaders. I mean, how many people have you hired and how many have gone down this road of they need the people that they're working with to love them, right? Not necessarily admire them. And there's a difference, right? So I think that was one really important to have to highlight. Like you learn the hard way. Mm-hmm. If I work in such a way that I need them to love me, I don't love me, right? Mm-hmm. When you changed it and you began saying, hey, you need to go do this. This is what I would do. Go do it. Did they stop loving you? I mean, it sounds like initially they did. But what happened to the office after that?
Well, I think here's the thing is you don't think about it in those terms. You're correct in what you're saying. It is, do they love me? But you don't really think about it like that in the moment. You think more like, I want to fix the problem. And now I'm making it more difficult for myself because I know I can get on the phone and fix this. And I know sometimes it's not just one conversation, it's a couple and it's dancing. We all do this in real estate. And so I had to figure out a way that I could teach them finesse. Yeah. Not all of them were going to be able to do that, right? But they weren't going to have any opportunity to learn it if I just did it for it. And so it was very hard for me to watch them fall. It's like I can now akin it to maybe having grandkids. When you've got kids, you make all sorts of mistakes. When you've got grandkids, you've learned a lot of lessons. And so you want to fix things without letting your kids make the mistakes that you made and learn. You can't take the pain out of life for people. You have to go through it. So even though your question is a good question, did they love me later? Yes, they loved me, but it didn't feel as good for them or for me in that moment. Yeah. So it gave some sort of tension, and people said things like, well, she just doesn't have enough time and she needs help. And but eventually they saw that it was starting that they realized that it was better for them because now they could do it.
Yeah. So I mislabeled it. It wasn't the love me. It was the get out of my way. I can do this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that's back to the D.
Yes.
Right? So, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah. Roll my sleeves up and just do it. It's easier. I think that's the hardest thing for leaders is it's easy for you because you know exactly what to do. Even if it's a complicated, difficult thing, you know the pathway there. And to stop, to slow down, to explain it to somebody who maybe isn't going to get it the first or the second time, to watch them fail is really painful for somebody who can just go straight there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one lesson that we learned then early is you have to let people find their way. And as a coach or a consultant, my job is not to get on the field, to teach you the play and then watch you run it.
Yeah.
And then when you come back, say, okay, what about X, Y, or Z? Or we didn't quite.
Can we do it better? Would there be a quicker way? Yeah.
I would say the other lesson I heard, though, is Steve Murray walks in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not part of the real estate industry, Steve Murray is one of those legendary figures, right? He founded a company called Real Trends, one of the most influential companies in real estate. They do a huge listing of the most influential players in the country every year. He's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if he was a big deal back then.
I don't think he was a big deal back then. I think he was just finding his way, but yeah.
But he walked in and he told you, you're not very good at your job.
Yes, he did.
Right? Which is, I mean, you had two choices.
Yeah.
Get the blank out of my office.
Yeah, right.
Or
that was the first thought.
or tell me about that.
Yeah.
And you chose tell me about that. And so what I see is be coachable.
Yeah.
Right? Here he came in and he offered you some very good advice, but you had to be coachable for it to be effective.
He was pretty perceptive too because it was a very short meeting. I mean, I reminded him of it years later and he seemed like he barely remembered it, but yet to me it was pivotal. But he was very perceptive because I told him I was loving my job. I told him everything was fine and dandy, but he clearly picked up that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And evaluating the company, his job was to come in and to see how stable is it, how, all of those things. And that's why he was interviewing me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's certainly very well known now.
Yeah. Well, and I love it's the power of a chance encounter, right? But he could have just been another guy who came through and I'm busy with my day and everything, whatever, get back to my thing.
Yeah.
But it landed. You took it to heart. You changed your operating style, which is not easy.
No.
Then, you didn't stay with Coldwell Banker forever, though.
No. So I, Tanya left. She was out selling her magazines and I was in this office, which has started to grow. We had started to have, I was Coldwell Banker's #1 recruiter. And I didn't mind telling Gary Keller that when I came over. And it was shameful that I had the courage to say that because I'd recruited so few people in comparison with the numbers that they recruit at Keller Williams. But I didn't know that. So you only know what you know, right? So I had the largest single franchise in the area in Washtenaw County, which was 65 agents. And I thought I was the queen bee. But yeah, so Latanya went off and I wanted to move into a new office because we were in a kind of a dingy office. And I asked the owner if we could move. And he said, well, if you can get 60 agents, you can move. And I think he really thought there was no way that we could get 60 agents. But I wanted to get out of that office, and we got 60. I started to recruit. Again, no lessons or teaching or anything, but I'd sold real estate enough, and people knew me. I was known really by everybody by that time. If you sell real estate in an area, your name's out there for everything. So pretty much everybody knew me, and we grew pretty quickly. And then we moved into the new location, and he gave me another goal then that I had to get so many. So we were doing well, and we had a lot of new people coming, and the dynamic of the office changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of really good producing agents. But Coldwell Banker at that time, they just kept making lots of changes. It wasn't necessarily specific to the overall company, but our particular ownership group. When you recruit, if you're a real recruiter, you recruit from within, right? It's a spiritual thing. I mean, I'm not going to sit in front of you and tell you, I believe that you are going to have your best opportunity with me under my wings or in my company on this plan, and then have you come and we change that plan. But that kept happening to me because I would recruit to the plan that we had, and then they would change it, and I couldn't control that. And it would make me feel terrible. I mean, I was like, I've just made you a promise and a commitment. I've given you my word, and now I can't live up to that anymore. I mean, how do you face everybody?
Yeah.
And they kept making changes. Some of them were just little. Others were sold as being little, but they were massive.
Uh-huh.
They wanted me to require all the agents to have a sign rider on their sign with a toll-free number. So you would take a listing and you'd have your sign, your company sign, and on the top of it would have a rider with an 800 number on it. If I called that number, it went to a call center who took the lead and then gave it back to me at a 35% referral fee. And they sold it as, it was really better for you because you were going to get help selling your houses. You were going to have this, they were going to pick the best agent to, it was a real take back of
this.
Absolutely. And so we had an ordinance in the city of Ann Arbor, which one of my competitors had got put into place, that you couldn't put signs up. Now, we didn't actually sell many right in the city of Ann Arbor, but I claimed that we couldn't participate in this rider program because of the ordinance. So, I was always working like that to get around things that we, that we dealt with. But then they brought on another one that was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I went and told them that I couldn't play anymore. I had to step down.
Yeah.
And they asked me to stay longer than I really wanted to because I was the broker and they hadn't got another broker to replace me. And then we started to just look for somewhere else to go and work. And we checked out, we read so many franchise documents, one after the other, line by line. They were like, oh my gosh. And then my colleague up the road at this company that was under the same ownership group as mine had gone to Keller Williams, and they were encouraging us to go and check it out. And I was like, I checked them out. I was online, and they were tiny. They were like 3,000 agents, and they were from Texas. And I was like, I've never even been there. And I was like, I'm not interested. But they kept pushing, and so I asked LaTanya, will you go down and check them out? And we didn't have much money, so we shared the ticket. I paid for half of her ticket and half of her hotel and half of the fee for Megacam, and she went. And on day 2, she called me and said, you need to come down here now. I was like, wow. And she said, yeah, now. I said, it's really expensive to come down. She said, I know, you just need to come. So I got on a plane and flew down there, and I heard Gary Keller talking and Mo Anderson, and we didn't read anything. We just signed everything. We didn't read the documents. We were just...
blown away.
Yeah.
So let me back up because I want to make sure I hit a couple of things. You had the ownership say to you, get to 60, and then you can do X. And I see this theme repeating. You didn't sit around going, well, I don't know how to recruit. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. You just got in motion, right?
Yeah.
And I think, for people who are starting out an entrepreneurial path, or people who are young people, I know this is an issue. I've got a 19-year-old. I think there's a tendency now, maybe because we have so much information that we feel like we have to know how to do everything before we do it. Would you be where you are today if you had waited for the plan?
No. I think, though, that there's certain people who, when they get a new car, they get that manual out of the plastic bag and they read the manual. And there's other people who throw the manual in the back and get in the car and start to drive it and look, well, where are the lights? How do I adjust my seat as they go? Well, I'm one of those people. I've never read a car manual. I don't, when I get an IKEA or something, I try and put it together without the instructions first. I usually have to go back and find the little men, what have you. But, I think some of it is our behavior. If you wait to get ready, you'll always be in getting ready mode. You got to just go.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll fail. What are you frightened of? You're not doing it now. So John Maxwell wrote that wonderful book about failing forward. And I mean, you have to fail forward. You make mistakes. You pick yourself up. You brush yourself off, and you think, that's great. I learned that. Yeah. If you some people can learn just by being told. My mom used to say to me over and over when I was a child, why can't you just learn by being told? Why do you always have to go and learn for yourself?
Yeah, just did. But I think it's, there's a balance, right, between, damn the torpedoes and then finding models and systems and applying them. Right. But I think you brought that just go mindset, right? But when you found like Steve Murray or people who could then show you kind of a light and darkness, you didn't go, well, I'm doing it my own way, right? That's the other thing that entrepreneurs, salespeople fall into. They may be a damn the torpedoes type person, and then they get a model and they go, well, I'm not going to do the model. I'm going to do it my way, right? And
I have some people around me that are like that too in the franchise world. I mean, here's the thing is that I'm all for going out and starting the process and going into something that I don't know, but I love to have somebody that I can see. I can look at you and go, I can do that because I can model. You're modeling it for me, and that to me is what a system, a model is you've modeled it for me.
Yeah,
I mightn't want to look at every little itty-nitty detail of how you do it, or I might not want to go the same way about getting there as you did. But once I see you do it, I can do it too.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of recapping here. It's success through people. Right, was a critical lesson. Be coachable. I say be an object in motion, right? And then, take direction. The other thing that really stood out just from that chapter was your word matters, right? And every time you change the deal on someone, trust is eroded.
Yeah.
And eventually it cannot be repaired.
No.
And that's what got you looking and ultimately what brought you to Keller Williams, where I think, we see this sort of underlying, this is who you are. And now you found this company where you didn't even read the franchise documents, which is horrifying.
It is horrifying. Yeah. I did not.
Yeah.
I did not. I was so taken by the authenticity of the people that we spoke to. You know what? At Coldwell Banker, we had beautiful manuals on glossy paper, heavyweight, beautiful things. When LaTanya and I sat in that room listening to Gary Keller, she is one of those people who automatically proofreads. And we had these old, really, I don't know if they were old, but they were tacky, bad copies. Back then, they used to hand you out this stuff. And she just sat there with her pen. It used to irritate me. She would correct everything, all the mistakes, or put periods in, or capitalize stuff. And I would just be going, stop it, just listen. And she'd say, I am listening. So, the fact that we didn't have all of the quality stuff didn't matter, because listening to their words and hearing how their stories and how they'd come together. The other thing that struck us about Keller Williams was that every single person that we spoke to was an agent first. Gary Keller was an agent. Mo Anderson was an agent. Mark Willis was an agent. They spoke our language. When we were at the other company, they didn't. They were corporate people who they didn't get real estate agents at any rate. And so I had people. I went back to Ann Arbor and brought a bunch of people back with me a few weeks later, and I had people sit in the room and listen to Gary, who I didn't know could sit on a seat for half an hour, that sat there like all day just listening to him. So those were really fun times. It's really exciting launching a new market center. You've got everybody learning new things and trying this and trying that. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, you can be kind of you're the revolution.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely were. It was fun. It's fun to be the revolution. Also, we enjoyed just being able to be who we were. We weren't trying to fit into something that didn't feel good anymore. We were who we wanted to be.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
So if you want to build something incredible, and you have, right? The Inland Empire is nothing. I mean, this is a large territory region. We got 19 market centers. You have the 3 that you personally own and operate. What I'm hearing is there has to be authenticity in it, right? Yeah. If people don't feel the freedom to really truly be who they are authentically, if they feel like they've got to fit into your mold of what it should look like, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and that's why it's not for everybody, right? The company isn't for everybody.
Oh yeah,
because there are people who aren't going to feel, they want to work differently, and that's okay. There's a place for everybody in real estate.
Yeah, but if I'm forming my real estate team, right, or I'm forming my company, right, I have to really think about, when I'm leading, I have to find people who can excel in my culture, not just people, right? And that's what you found. You found someone who they spoke the same language. They were very, and yes, Gary Keller. If you're not familiar with Gary Keller, he is Gary Keller, right? That I think he's the best in the world at being Gary Keller.
Yeah.
Mark Willis is the same thing. These kind of legends in the real estate industry. To be in that kind of environment then gave you the freedom to go take some risks. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to be in an environment where you feel like if you make mistakes, it's okay. And Keller Williams showed us that over and over, that they don't mind you making mistakes. They just want to see that you never make them again. That you've learned.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. The difference in the people that they lift up at Keller Williams versus other companies. I remember back in the early days, Mo Anderson would put us on a panel and we'd be excited to go and talk about our launch because we had a particularly good launch. And she would get us up there and ask us to talk about all the things that went wrong. And I would get off that panel feeling like,
yeah.
But that was the thing, is that she wanted us to share, we know what went right because here you are and you've got all these agents and you're making money and it's all good. But let's learn what happened along the way that was bad and the mistakes that you made. And we had plenty of them, so we could talk all day because you look back overall and it's a success, but one after another, we did things that were just mistakes made out of, just ignorance.
Yeah, I think it's a special culture that holds up and shares what they did wrong so that you can avoid it.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Because, I think in this industry, in the real estate industry, there are a lot of very competitive people, right? And to find a group of very competitive people who can share victory that way, who can say, oh yeah, I'm the best at what I do, but let me tell you,
right.
You should have seen last week.
Yeah.
That's a different, that's not universal.
No. And get a pleasure out of it. It was, you can make it. You can sit and cry about it for a week, or you can just laugh at yourselves. And I think that was the joy in what we did, is that everything was just funny. We would find ourselves in situations that were, I mean, I will always remember, and they will always remind me of when we first moved into the office. We got a small space. A company that was downsizing let us move in, and the last thing that I was thinking about was telephones. And so we had a phone. There was a phone that was in the system that they had, that they'd allowed us to have in each one of the rooms that we had, but there was no phone that would connect from one line. We transferred our number over, but that number rang on one line. So we literally, when the phone rang, we got a long extension cord and we would run it down to the office for whoever was on the phone.
Yeah.
And there was one guy who, he was running down one day and he tripped, and then he kind of saved himself, and then he tripped again. And all the time he's saying to this person, hang on. It was hilarious, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, they could have all been really upset with me. What kind of a leader are you that doesn't think that we need a phone that has lines that we can transfer? But instead of that, it was just a fun time. And and then when we found out what phones cost and what we were going to have to pay to have a phone that did that, I was like, well, I think this works pretty good for a while.
Yeah. It's a lesson about leadership, though, that sometimes I think as leaders, we feel like everything has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I've got everything perfect. And this is an excuse to not try hard. But when it's not, and you invite people into it, they have ownership.
Yeah.
And now that story is not your story of failure. It's everybody's story of, oh my gosh, do you remember that phone? Mm-hmm. And this is our family. Yeah. You know, it more was than just a place you do business.
Yeah. It was it felt like a family. It truly did. And we kept that feeling. I mean, even now I go back there, and many of those people are still there, even after many years. They still work there. And, you know, whenever there's an evening or any kind of a meeting, somebody will start talking about one of the things that happened and how they, you know, how they transferred over. And yeah, it was fun.
Well, Marian, we're getting to the end of our time here. And I really appreciate it because, you know, your story, I think, is an inspirational one.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I mean, but an unexpected one. Mm-hmm. Right? You didn't, I mean, like I said, I don't think you in your wildest dreams thought, I'm going to go get my real estate license, and then I'm going to form a company. And then from that company, I'm going to go found a region in that company. And, you know, what a wild ride. But it really was. I mean, I think you were coachable, right? You were an object in motion. When a door opened, you didn't stop to go, I don't know if I could do that. You just said, well, we'll find out if I can do that, right? Mm-hmm. And you did it in a very authentic way. You didn't go try to be somebody else. And, you know, you mentioned something about your word matters. And they kept changing the deal on you. And I have seen you do this where someone else negotiated a deal on your behalf that was terrible. And you said, well, we have to stand by that word because it was a projection of my word. You may not have agreed with it and didn't know what was happening. We have to honor the agreement, right? Yeah. And that's so powerful. What are and this is just coming out of nowhere, but what are some other sort of leadership, I don't say laws, but just things you think about when you think about leading and opportunity? Where does your mind go?
Well, that's a good question. I think for sure authenticity is one of the key things. There's no way that people don't want to be around people who aren't authentic. So being who you are is key. I think that all leaders need a certain level of, I don't know if arrogance is the right word, but they certainly need a certain amount of belief in who they are, because you got to get out there on stage and be the person, and nobody wants to follow somebody who doesn't have the ability to show off as a leader, right? Mm-hmm. And but I think that a true leader has to have the ability when they to not always be on in that way. And by that I mean, you'll be at a meeting, you have to have the ability to believe in yourself enough to get up and do that meeting. But when you step down off the stage, you just have to remember who you are and what got you here. And you can't you can't take for granted that nobody gets there alone. And I think that in real estate, for sure, we're all a product of the environment that we've been in, and you've got to take the people along with you that get you where you are. You can't leave people behind. I think that, one of the hardest things in being a leader is that you have to be ready to acquiesce a lot. Everybody thinks that it's great to be a leader because you kind of get to do what you want, but most of the time you're not doing what you want at all. You're standing aside and allowing other people to do it because you have the ability to open doors for them. And it extends off into the family. Real estate's a family business. Even if your direct family isn't in the business with you, you take it home. And people will say that, no, you mustn't take real estate home, but you can't. It's an extension of your whole family life. So, you have to be able to bring your family into it in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, Marian, I feel like what we've done here is part one, not because we've barely scratched on Keller Williams, and a lot of the underlying qualities that were kind of apparent in the story, in the journey. You get to Keller Williams, and now you have a company that has a very similar mindset ethos about coachability, about getting in motion, learn as you go, about your word mattering, right, and integrity, and all of that, and in a lot of respects, that is when everything changed.
Yeah.
And I think your opportunity changed. And I want to get into that.
Yeah.
Now we're in.
When you're in alignment with who you are and you're in an environment that you have an opportunity to excel, that's when everything changes. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When you find that place, it's a freedom to really be able to take off and go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being in here with us. I'm going to sign off. But hey, guys, thanks for listening. I know this is a conversation where you're going to revisit because the alignment between Marian and this company, Keller Williams, which at that point was a small regional real estate company that quickly became the largest real estate company in the world, and how she was part of that story. There's so much more to learn. But, hope you enjoy the podcast. If you like more information on Prosperity Collabs and what we do to help you be successful, go to prosperitycollabs.com. And until next time, remember, success is not an individual sport. We'll see you guys later.